The Beatitudes form the cornerstone of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, but they are often misunderstood as moral encouragements or religious ideals. In truth, they are far more than that. When viewed through the lens of metaphysics, as Emmet Fox powerfully suggests, the Beatitudes become not merely inspirational sayings, but precise spiritual laws. They represent a sequential, universal path for transforming human consciousness and returning to the awareness of our divine origin. This shift in perspective changes everything. To understand the Beatitudes as metaphysical principles is to realize that Jesus was not laying out a doctrine for a new religion. He was unveiling a process of inner evolution, a spiritual psychology, if you will, for those ready to awaken. He wasn't telling people what to do. He was describing what naturally happens when a person begins to align with the higher laws of divine mind. Each Beatitude marks a distinct phase on this journey, a progressive ladder from ego-based existence to spiritual mastery. This is why the order in which they appear matters. They're not a random list of virtues. They're steps, each one deepening the soul's capacity to perceive and embody truth. Each one unlocks the door to the next, creating a cumulative transformation in the way we experience ourselves and reality. The first Beatitude is, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." The term poor in spirit has long confused readers, as it seems to celebrate a lack of something. But metaphysically, it points to a profound state of openness. To be poor in spirit means to become empty of ego, to let go of the arrogance of thinking we are self-sufficient, separate from the source. It's the moment when a person realizes that the intellect, personal effort, and material control are not enough. That realization, though painful, is actually the beginning of wisdom. The ego softens, and a crack opens through which divine light can enter. This is the first step to entering the kingdom of heaven, which Jesus describes not as a place, but a state of consciousness. The second Beatitude says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." Again, this isn't about sadness in the emotional sense. It refers to the grief that arises when illusions begin to fall away. As one awakens spiritually, there's a kind of mourning for the false self, the past life built on illusion, and the dreams that were rooted in ego. It's the sorrow that comes with seeing the truth for the first time. Yet this mourning is holy. It is the necessary emotional release that clears the way for comfort. Not the comfort of the world, but the inner peace that only truth can bring. Next comes, if you like what I'm doing here, please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. It helps us to grow and motivates me to make more videos like this. And don't forget to let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love to know how far this wisdom's spreading around the world. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Meekness is not weakness. It is spiritual strength under control. It is the conscious surrender of personal will to divine will. In metaphysical terms, meekness represents receptivity, the ability to tune into higher guidance without interference from pride or resistance. The earth that is inherited is not necessarily the physical world, but dominion over one's experience of it. Those who are meek do not strive, they align, and through alignment, they command reality in harmony with divine law. The fourth Beatitude is, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled." Righteousness here means right thinking, thinking aligned with divine truth. When the soul reaches this stage, it has moved past egoic striving and now burns with desire for inner alignment. This is not about moral righteousness or religious purity. It's about spiritual integrity, the hunger to live in truth, to think thoughts that are pure, powerful, and in harmony with the divine blueprint. And the law is clear, that which you earnestly seek in spirit, you will receive. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Mercy, at this stage, becomes a natural outflow of spiritual clarity. When you see others through the lens of divine love, judgment dissolves. You no longer project your wounds onto others or hold them hostage to their past actions. Mercy is not passive tolerance. It is a powerful act of inner liberation. And metaphysically, the law of cause and effect applies. What you give in consciousness returns to you multiplied. The merciful receive mercy because they have made themselves receptive to divine grace. Then, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Purity of heart is not about moral cleanliness. It is about focus. A pure heart is one that is undivided, undistracted by fear, ego, or doubt. When your mind and heart are united in spiritual intention, your inner eye opens. Seeing God does not refer to a physical vision, but to perceiving the divine pattern behind all form. At this level, the veil lifts. You begin to experience the world as it truly is, radiant, unified, alive with the presence of God. The seventh Beatitude is, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." A peacemaker is one who has made peace within, and therefore radiates peace without. They no longer react to the world. They respond from truth. These are the ones who walk into chaos and create stillness, who speak with authority without domination. To be a peacemaker is to embody the Christ presence. You become a clear channel through which divine order flows. This is why such people are called the children of God. They reflect the divine nature fully. Finally, blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. At this final stage, the individual is fully aligned with divine law and no longer seeks validation from the world. They may be misunderstood, opposed, even attacked, not because they are wrong, but because they shine a light that threatens illusion. And yet, they remain unmoved. Their joy is not dependent on circumstance, because they are established in the inner kingdom. They have come full circle. The kingdom of heaven is no longer a distant goal. It is their present reality. When we see the Beatitudes as a sequence of consciousness, their meaning deepens exponentially. They are not moral checklists. They are not passive platitudes. They are active, dynamic stages of inner transformation. Each one builds upon the last, clearing old beliefs, softening the ego, and inviting the soul into fuller remembrance of its divine nature. Emmet Fox's great contribution was in stripping away the superstition and literalism that cloud spiritual truth. He understood that Jesus was not interested in behavior modification. He was calling humanity to awaken. The Beatitudes, when approached as metaphysical truths, become a practical map to inner peace, personal power, and divine realization. This is the beginning of our journey. To read the Sermon on the Mount not as a sermon at all, but as a metaphysical initiation, a guide to awakening the Christ within. For centuries, Jesus has been portrayed through the lens of organized religion, as a divine exception rather than a divine example, as a distant savior rather than an intimate guide. But the deeper truth, as illuminated by Emmet Fox and other metaphysical teachers, is that Jesus was not merely a religious figure to be worshipped. He was a mystic, a master of consciousness, a revealer of universal laws that apply to every human being regardless of background, culture, or creed. When Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within you," he was pointing not to himself, but to the divine presence that lives in each of us. He came not to start a new religion, but to awaken people to the divine power within themselves, a power that he called the Father, the Kingdom, or the Christ. These were not theological abstractions, but descriptions of spiritual reality. To understand Jesus as a mystic is to see him as one who experienced the divine directly and sought to teach others to do the same. Mysticism, by its very nature, bypasses external form and speaks directly to the soul. It transcends ritual and dogma. It is experiential, not theoretical. And this is precisely the kind of teaching Jesus offered. His parables, sayings, and demonstrations were tools to shift human consciousness, to move people out of fear and into faith, out of separation and into oneness. Religious institutions, over time, have often reversed this process. They've taken Jesus' original, liberating message and surrounded it with layers of guilt, fear, and hierarchy. Instead of encouraging personal revelation, they've emphasized obedience. Instead of urging direct communion with the divine, they've placed mediators and middlemen between the individual and God. But Jesus himself said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." He was never asking to be idolized. He was pointing the way to inner freedom. One of the most radical ideas in metaphysical Christianity is the distinction between Jesus the man and the Christ consciousness. Jesus was the individual, born in a specific time and place, with a physical body and human emotions. The Christ, on the other hand, is not a person. It is a universal state of awareness, a level of consciousness that fully knows its oneness with God. Jesus fully embodied this state, and in doing so became the Christ. But he never claimed to be the only one who could. In fact, he said quite the opposite. "The works that I do, you shall do also, and greater works than these shall you do." That's not the voice of someone building a religion around himself. That's the voice of a teacher trying to awaken others to their own potential. The Christ is not Jesus' last name. It is the divine nature within all of us, waiting to be recognized, claimed, and lived out. Emmet Fox emphasized that Jesus taught laws, not arbitrary rules, but spiritual laws that are as precise and reliable as the law of gravity. For example, Jesus said, "It is done unto you as you believe." This is not a poetic suggestion. It is a literal statement of cause and effect. Your beliefs shape your reality. Your inner world creates your outer experience. When you understand this, life stops feeling random. You begin to realize that your consciousness is the creative force in your life. Another key metaphysical principle Jesus taught is the law of non-resistance. Resist not evil, he said. In a religious context, this has often been interpreted as passivity or weakness. But metaphysically, it is one of the most powerful teachings. It means, do not give your energy to what you do not want. Do not fight the problem. Rise above it in consciousness. When you stop reacting to appearances and instead align with truth, the problem dissolves or transforms. This is not magic. It is spiritual law. Jesus also taught the law of forgiveness, not as a moral duty, but as a necessary step in freeing your own consciousness. Forgive, and you shall be forgiven, he said. Why? Because harboring resentment locks you into the vibration of the offense. It keeps you tied to the pain. But when you forgive, you release yourself from the energetic bind. You free your heart, your mind, and your life force. Forgiveness is not about the other person. It's about your alignment with divine flow. Throughout his teachings, Jesus pointed to the inner world as the true source of transformation. Cleanse the inside of the cup, he said, and the outside will be clean also. This is a profound metaphysical instruction. Don't try to manipulate outer conditions. Transform your inner consciousness, and the outer conditions will reflect that shift. This is the essence of the law of correspondence. As within, so without. By understanding Jesus as a mystic, we also gain clarity on what it means to follow him. It does not mean blind belief. It means spiritual practice, taking his teachings seriously enough to apply them to our lives. It means meditating on the Beatitudes, using affirmations that align with truth, forgiving daily, choosing love over fear, and seeking the kingdom within rather than chasing external success. This is not about abandoning religion, but about going deeper than its surface. Religion, when used correctly, can be a container for mystical awakening. But the container is not the contents. The ritual is not the revelation. And Jesus always pointed toward the revelation. It is also worth noting that mysticism is not exclusive to Christianity. The truths that Jesus taught are echoed in every major spiritual tradition. The Buddha spoke of the cessation of suffering through inner awareness. Krishna taught about non-attachment and divine duty. Lao Tzu spoke of the Tao as the underlying order of the universe. These are not conflicting messages. They are different expressions of the same truth. The Christ consciousness that Jesus embodied is a universal pattern. It lives at the core of every awakened being. So, to see Jesus as a mystic is to liberate him from centuries of religious baggage and restore him to his original role, a way shower. Someone who modeled the possibilities of divine realization within the human form. Someone who lived from the inside out, who transcended limitation by aligning with truth, and who left a map for anyone willing to walk the path. When we follow that path, not by worshiping Jesus, but by embodying the same consciousness he demonstrated, we begin to awaken the Christ within ourselves. And in doing so, we don't just change our own lives. We become vessels for healing, peace, and transformation in the world around us. This is the Jesus Emmet Fox spoke of, not the icon in stained glass windows, but the living presence of divine intelligence that speaks through your own heart when you're quiet enough to listen. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. This is the first Beatitude, and it is no accident that it comes first. It is the foundation upon which all spiritual growth is built. Without this step, the rest of the path cannot begin. It is the spiritual equivalent of breaking the soil before planting the seed. Before light can pour into the soul, there must be space. Before wisdom can guide your steps, there must be surrender. And before you can ascend to higher realms of consciousness, you must first descend into humility. But what does it really mean to be poor in spirit? To the modern ear, the phrase can sound confusing or even negative. Does Jesus mean we should feel weak, unworthy, or lacking in value? Not at all. In fact, to be poor in spirit has nothing to do with low self-esteem or defeatism. Metaphysically, it represents a sacred emptiness, a voluntary loosening of ego, a profound receptivity to truth, and a willingness to be taught by spirit rather than by the noisy assumptions of the world. To be poor in spirit is to say, from the depths of your being, I do not know everything. I am open. I am teachable. I release my pride, my rigid beliefs, and my illusions of control. I make space for the divine to work through me. It is not weakness. It is spiritual strength disguised as surrender. In the language of mysticism, the soul must become empty in order to be filled. The ego, which clings to its opinions, fears, and identities, must be softened before the light of truth can enter. This process of emptying is not a loss. It is a sacred clearing. It is an invitation for divine intelligence to enter where once the noise of the false self reigned supreme. This is why Jesus begins his list of Beatitudes here. Because the kingdom of heaven, which is not a place but a state of consciousness, cannot be reached by striving, ego, or intellect. It is accessed through stillness, surrender, and the purity of a humbled heart. Consider the phrase kingdom of heaven. In metaphysical terms, this refers to a dimension of life where harmony, abundance, peace, and divine guidance are fully present. It is not found in the external world. It exists within, and it becomes available the moment your inner state aligns with it. Jesus says, the kingdom of God is within you. But that kingdom cannot be perceived until the veil of ego is lifted. Ego does not mean arrogance alone. It is any false belief in separation from God, from others, or from your true self. Ego tells you that you are alone, that you must fight for survival, that you are what others think of you. Ego identifies with titles, roles, possessions, and performance. It constantly seeks validation from the outside world. But the spiritual journey requires that we unlearn these illusions and come home to our eternal essence. Being poor in spirit means seeing through the ego's game and choosing something higher. It means stepping into the beginner's mind, not only intellectually, but emotionally. It is a recognition that the greatest truths cannot be forced or earned, only received. And they're received in stillness, through the quiet inner voice that speaks not in noise, but in knowing. This humility is not weakness, it is wisdom. The spiritual path is not a path of accumulation. It is a path of letting go, of unlearning, unraveling, and unclenching. And this begins with the simple but radical act of admitting, I don't have all the answers. I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to change. This kind of openness takes courage. In a world obsessed with certainty, confidence, and control, to admit your spiritual poverty can feel vulnerable. But in that vulnerability lies incredible power. Because the moment you let go of needing to figure it all out, you become available to the infinite intelligence of divine mind. You no longer carry the weight alone. You allow yourself to be guided, to be held, to be led by something greater. Emmet Fox reminds us that spiritual law works with mathematical precision. The moment you open the door of your mind and heart to truth, even just a little, the light begins to enter. And where there is light, there cannot be darkness. This is why Jesus says, "Theirs is the kingdom of heaven." He doesn't say it will be theirs. He says it is. Because the moment you surrender your egoic grip and choose openness, you're no longer operating at the frequency of fear or control. You've already stepped into a different dimension of being. You've already begun to live from the inside out. This shift may not change your outer life immediately, but it will transform your inner world, and eventually, all things around you will begin to reflect that transformation. To be poor in spirit is to become spiritually available. You stop trying to push the river, and instead, you let it flow through you. You stop defending your opinions and start listening for higher wisdom. You stop competing and start cooperating with the rhythm of the universe. You stop reacting and start responding from presence. This is the birthplace of all miracles. From this space, prayer becomes real, not a plea to a distant God, but a communion with the infinite within. Affirmations begin to work, not because they are magic words, but because you've made room for their vibration to take root. Healing occurs, not just of body, but of mind and perception. Guidance flows, not in chaos, but in clarity. Spiritual humility is the first key because it unlocks the door to everything else. You cannot receive wisdom if you think you already know. You cannot hear divine direction if your mind is full of noise. You cannot step into your power if you're clinging to a false sense of control. But the moment you release your grip, the moment you soften your defenses, the moment you say, "I'm ready to learn," the universe responds. You have tuned your consciousness to the frequency of truth, and truth always delivers. So, to be poor in spirit is not a deficiency. It is a decision to value truth over ego, growth over certainty, and spiritual wealth over worldly pride. It is the starting point of the greatest journey a soul can take. Because only when the cup is empty can it be filled. And only when the self is quiet can the Christ within speak. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Matthew 5 verse 4. This second beatitude strikes a strange chord when heard through a worldly mindset. How can mourning be considered a blessing? Isn't mourning associated with loss, pain, and despair? And yet Jesus places it directly after the first foundational step, being poor in spirit. If poverty of spirit represents the opening of the soul through humility, then mourning is the sacred process that follows when the old identity begins to fall away. In metaphysical terms, mourning is not merely grieving over death or tragedy, though it includes that. It is the soul's response to awakening. It is the inner process of letting go of illusions, ego attachments, false identities, and misplaced hopes. It is the grieving that occurs when the surface self begins to realize it is not in control, not separate, and not immortal in the way it once believed. Mourning, then, is not weakness. It is purification. When Jesus says, "Blessed are those who mourn," he is speaking to the very real pain of transformation. As the light of truth begins to enter a soul that has chosen spiritual awakening, the illusions that once seemed solid begin to dissolve. What once brought comfort, external validation, possessions, fixed beliefs, no longer satisfies. There's a kind of sorrow in this shift, not because truth is painful, but because letting go of falsehood is. Spiritual mourning is not depression or despair. It is the holy sadness that arises when you recognize how long you have lived under a false self, how deeply you've clung to things that were never real. It's the ache of seeing through illusions and realizing how much energy you've given to what never truly mattered. This type of mourning is not to be avoided. It is to be embraced. Because only when you grieve the false can you fully receive the real. There's something sacred about honest sorrow. Unlike resistance or denial, mourning is an act of surrender. It says, I allow this to pass through me. I will not run from it. I will feel it fully so that it may cleanse me. This is what turns pain into alchemy. When pain is resisted, it festers. When it is welcomed with presence, it becomes purifying fire, burning away the dross, the egoic attachments, the stories we've told ourselves to feel safe. And this is why Jesus promises, they shall be comforted. Not maybe, not eventually, but they shall. Because once you allow yourself to mourn authentically, you create space for something higher. You clear the clutter of the heart. You stop holding life at a distance. You come into contact with your naked soul, and in that moment of openness, divine comfort flows in. But what is divine comfort? It is not the comfort of avoidance or false security. It is not the kind of comfort that distracts or dulls. Divine comfort is peace that passes understanding. It is the awareness of your oneness with life, even in the midst of pain. It is the inner assurance that nothing real can be lost, and that everything that falls away is making room for something eternal. This kind of comfort is not shallow or sentimental. It is transformative. When Emmet Fox taught on this Beatitude, he described mourning as a necessary step in spiritual regeneration. He explained that you cannot rise to new levels of consciousness without first shedding the emotional weight of the lower ones. Much like a snake must shed its old skin, the soul must shed the beliefs, identities, and attachments that no longer serve its evolution. And the process of shedding is never comfortable, but it is always blessed. There is another layer to this mourning. Sometimes it is not just personal pain we grieve. As our spiritual awareness grows, we begin to mourn for the collective pain of humanity, the injustice, the suffering, the separation. We feel deeply the unconsciousness of the world, and there is sorrow in that realization. This, too, is a sacred mourning. It is a sign that your heart is expanding, becoming less self-centered and more attuned to the suffering of others. But again, this mourning is not without purpose. It is what activates compassion, empathy, and the desire to serve. In this Beatitude, we are being invited to view pain through a new lens, not as a punishment or a problem, but as a portal. Mourning is the emotional passageway through which we move from illusion to truth. And when we go through it consciously, we don't just survive it. We emerge more whole, more open, more aligned with divine reality. Let's make this practical. What does it mean to live this Beatitude? It means allowing yourself to feel without judgment. It means letting go of the pressure to be spiritually positive all the time. It means facing what hurts and saying, this too is part of my awakening. It means giving up the need to explain or fix everything, and simply allowing the wave to move through. Often, in the West especially, there is a resistance to mourning. Grief is seen as something to get over, something to numb or push away. But in the spiritual life, mourning is not an obstacle. It is part of the journey. And the deeper you allow yourself to go into that sacred sorrow, the more profound the comfort that follows. This comfort may come in many forms. A sudden sense of peace in the middle of chaos. A still voice within that says, I'm here. An insight that brings clarity. A shift in perception that reorders your entire reality. Comfort comes not because the pain is gone, but because the pain has been met with love, and love always heals. So let us remember, to mourn is not to be cursed. It is to be on the path. It is to be awake enough to feel. It is to be alive enough to care. And it is to be spiritually mature enough to let go of what no longer serves your soul. Blessed are those who mourn, Jesus says, not because the pain is pleasant, but because it is honest, purifying, and transformational. It is in our tears that we often find our truest prayers. It is in our sorrow that we drop the pretense and come face to face with divine reality. And it is in that raw, open state that the Comforter, which is the Spirit of truth, enters and does its holy work. So if you find yourself in mourning, whether for a person, a dream, a version of yourself, or the brokenness of the world, do not resist it. Enter it, feel it, honor it, and know this. You are being comforted not by the world, but by the very presence of God within you. You are passing through the fire, and what will emerge on the other side is not the same person who went in, but someone lighter, truer, more radiant, and more free. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Matthew 5 verse 5. In a world that glorifies dominance, speed, control, and self-assertion, the word meek is often misunderstood, confused with weakness, passivity, or a lack of drive. Yet in the language of spirit, meekness is not weakness at all. It is controlled power, calm confidence, and spiritual mastery. It is the posture of a soul that no longer fights for position, but trusts the divine flow to deliver all that is rightfully theirs. To be meek is to walk through life with inner strength and outer softness, a balance that only spiritual maturity can produce. And it's no accident that Jesus places this teaching third in the sequence of Beatitudes. Once the soul has emptied itself of ego, poor in spirit, and grieved its illusions, mourning, it becomes ready for something greater, divine power through surrender. Meekness is not resignation. It's not spiritual laziness. It is choosing stillness over struggle, not because you don't care, but because you understand the law. It's the ability to take right action without needing to dominate outcomes. It is the consciousness that understands, I don't have to force life to work for me. I just have to align with it. Emmet Fox described meekness as teachableness, a deep openness to divine direction. A meek soul listens before it acts, trusts before it resists, and aligns before it asserts. The meek are those who have nothing to prove, not because they're weak, but because they are anchored in truth, anchored in faith, anchored in the knowing that the universe is not random or cruel, but orderly and intelligent, and that their role is not to control, but to cooperate. This idea is radical in today's fast-paced world. We're trained to believe that if we don't push, strive, and hustle, nothing will happen. But metaphysical law works in the opposite direction. It teaches that force blocks flow, and that spiritual power comes through clarity, not chaos. The meek inherit the earth not because they seize it, but because they become a magnetic match to it. What does it mean to inherit the earth? On the surface, it seems like a paradox. How could the quiet, the receptive, and the humble inherit a world built on competition? But this phrase isn't about material conquest. The earth here symbolizes your experience of reality, your inner and outer world, your relationships, health, abundance, and peace. To inherit the earth means to live in harmony with divine order and receive the full richness of life, not through striving, but through alignment. When you are meek in spirit, you stop trying to bend life to your will. Instead, you begin to bend your will to life's divine rhythm. You listen more and argue less. You trust more and fear less. You respond from peace instead of reacting from panic. This shift in energy transforms your relationship with everything, from money and work to relationships and time. Meekness also brings clarity. When you're not blinded by the need to win or dominate, you can see what's truly yours. You stop chasing what isn't meant for you and start attracting what is. This is spiritual efficiency, doing less but accomplishing more. Not because you're passive, but because you're precisely aligned. There's tremendous strength in a person who doesn't need to prove anything. Think of the ocean, soft and fluid on the surface, but unimaginably powerful at depth. It moves with its own rhythm, never rushing, never resisting. The ocean does not argue with the shoreline. It simply is, and through its still strength, it carves canyons, carries ships, and reshapes continents. This is the power of meekness. To move without forcing, to influence without shouting, to stand tall without towering over others. It's a quiet confidence that comes from knowing your source. And when you know your source, when you know that life flows through you and not just to you, You no longer scramble for control. You no longer need to grasp, push, manipulate, or cling. You inherit what is yours because you are not energetically blocking it with fear. Meekness also connects deeply to discipline. Not the harsh, rigid kind, but the inner discipline to hold your center, to not react impulsively, to not fall into panic or rage when things don't go your way. It is emotional mastery, spiritual poise. The meek are not swayed by every opinion, criticism, or threat. They have developed an inner anchoring so deep that external conditions no longer shake them. This is a crucial point. The meek are not victims. They are victors, but their victory comes through inner alignment, not outer aggression. Their power doesn't come from the world. It comes from the presence of God within. And that presence, when honored, supplies every need. So how do we cultivate meekness? We start by releasing the need to control outcomes. This doesn't mean we stop acting. It means we act from peace, not pressure. We stop reacting to life and start responding from truth. We let go of urgency and step into divine timing. We check in with Spirit before we rush to fix or fight. We learn to say, I trust the higher order at work here, even when I don't fully understand it. Prayer and meditation are key tools in this process. They help quiet the mind, soothe the ego, and open us to divine guidance. Affirmations like, I release control and trust the flow of divine life through me, or I act from stillness and receive what is mine in peace, can help anchor the vibration of meekness in your daily consciousness. Practicing non-resistance is also essential. This doesn't mean being passive in the face of injustice or wrongdoing, but it means not giving away your power by reacting from anger or fear. The meek know how to act with authority without becoming aggressive. They understand that true power is quiet, focused, and rooted in clarity. Jesus, the master of meekness, exemplified this at every step of his life. He did not boast, dominate, or seek personal glory. Yet his words changed the world. His presence calmed storms, healed diseases, and transformed lives, not through manipulation, but through pure spiritual authority. He didn't impose his will, he aligned with divine will. And in that alignment, miracles flowed. To inherit the earth, we must step into this kind of consciousness, not by demanding, but by allowing, not by grasping, but by receiving, not by controlling, but by becoming available to divine order. And when we do, life begins to work in ways that defy logic. Opportunities arise without struggle. Relationships become more harmonious. Inner peace becomes your baseline. You are no longer chasing life. You are co-creating with it. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Not because they fight for it, but because they become vessels for divine flow. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Matthew 5 verse 6. This fourth beatitude marks a turning point in the journey of spiritual awakening. Up to this point, the soul has passed through surrender, poor in spirit, release, mourning, and alignment with divine flow, meekness. Now, a deeper force begins to emerge, the sacred craving, a longing that doesn't come from the ego, but from the spirit. It is not a hunger for material gain or worldly success. It is a thirst for truth, a desire for righteousness, which means right thinking, right being, right consciousness. This is not about moral superiority. The word righteousness has often been twisted into something self-righteous, judgmental, or religiously exclusive. But in metaphysical terms, righteousness means being aligned with divine law. It is the state of harmony between your thoughts, feelings, and the universal principles that govern life. It is inner coherence with spiritual reality. To hunger and thirst for that alignment is to make it your deepest priority, not out of fear or obligation, but from the soul's recognition that only truth satisfies. Just as physical hunger signals a need for nourishment, spiritual hunger is the soul's signal that it's ready to expand. This longing is not a deficiency. It is an activation. It's the divine within you knocking on the door of your awareness saying, there is more. You are more. Come higher. This hunger is the pivot point between complacency and transformation. It's what separates passive spirituality from real inner evolution. Many people encounter truth, but remain unchanged because they don't crave it. They admire it from a distance, but aren't willing to let it rearrange their lives. But those who hunger and thirst for righteousness are different. They are willing to be changed. They are willing to let truth disrupt them, challenge them, and lead them into unfamiliar territory. And to those, Jesus says, they shall be filled. This is not a vague promise. It is a spiritual law. In the same way the law of gravity ensures that a dropped object will fall, the law of consciousness ensures that what you consistently seek, you will attract. Desire is magnetic. When you crave divine alignment, when you deeply want to think, speak, and live in harmony with truth, you set your entire being on a frequency that attracts clarity, order, peace, and divine guidance. Emmet Fox emphasized this exact point. Your outer life is a reflection of your inner patterns of thought. When you desire higher truth above all else, your consciousness starts to shift. Your old patterns begin to dissolve. New ideas come. Old wounds rise for healing. And most importantly, the power of divine mind begins to work through you, adjusting everything necessary to match your intention. This is what being filled really means. You're not just temporarily satisfied. You become saturated with divine presence. You feel peace without reason, joy without cause, direction without effort. Life begins to click. You stop operating from confusion or chaos because your hunger has brought you into a higher vibration, a vibration where divine order reigns. But let's be honest, hunger is not comfortable. It pulls at you. It won't let you settle. It creates a kind of holy restlessness, a sense that you can't go back to how things were, but you're not yet sure what lies ahead. This is the space of transformation. It's uncomfortable because your soul is expanding beyond its previous limitations. In this space, many are tempted to numb the hunger with distractions, with busyness, with surface-level spirituality. But if you can sit in the discomfort, if you can honor the longing without rushing to escape it, you'll find that the very hunger you feel is the invitation into divine nourishment. Spiritual hunger leads to prayer, not the kind of prayer that begs, but the kind that listens. Hunger leads to study, not to accumulate knowledge, but to embody wisdom. Hunger leads to silence, not as escape, but as sacred space. Hunger leads to integrity, not because of rules, but because your soul craves purity. To hunger and thirst for righteousness means you begin to prioritize your inner world over your outer world. You begin to ask deeper questions. Is this thought aligned with truth? Is this choice a reflection of love or fear? Does this relationship expand me or contract me? Am I living from presence or from programming? These questions don't come from ego. They arise naturally when your soul becomes thirsty for alignment. And asking them consistently creates clarity. The spiritual fog begins to lift. You begin to see your patterns. You become less reactive, more reflective. And as this clarity deepens, your life begins to rearrange. You may lose interest in certain conversations, habits, or environments. You may be pulled to new teachers, new ideas, new spiritual practices. This is all part of the filling process. You're no longer consuming what starves your spirit. You're being fed by truth itself. And eventually, you realize what you were seeking was never outside of you. The alignment you longed for, the peace, the clarity, the love, was always within you, waiting for your full attention. The hunger was not a problem. It was the compass. And once you followed it, it led you home. Another beautiful dimension of this beatitude is that it honors the process. It doesn't say blessed are the righteous. It says blessed are those who hunger and thirst. In other words, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't need a flawless meditation practice or a perfect moral record. You simply need to desire truth deeply. That desire alone changes you. It creates momentum in your consciousness. It activates unseen spiritual laws. It draws to you everything you need for growth. Not always what you expect, but always what is necessary. This is the grace of divine law. When you seek truth with sincerity, truth seeks you. When you open yourself to divine order, it begins to unfold through your life. When you crave alignment, the universe conspires to bring you into it. You shall be filled, not partially, not occasionally, but completely, in the way that truly matters. Not the ego's version of success, but the soul's experience of peace, joy, power, and purpose. So ask yourself, what am I truly hungry for? What does my soul thirst for when all distractions fall away? Where am I still feeding myself with false nourishment? And then, with honesty and humility, say yes to the hunger, yes to the thirst, yes to the discomfort that precedes expansion. Because this is not lack, it is initiation. It is the call of the Christ within you, drawing you closer to who you truly are. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Matthew 5, verse 7. At this stage in the Beatitudes, the soul has moved through humility, mourning, surrender, and spiritual hunger. It has softened, opened, and aligned. Now, something begins to pour through the heart. Mercy, not as a moral obligation, but as a natural, energetic expression of inner transformation. To be merciful is to extend compassion, forgiveness, and grace, not because the other deserves it by human standards, but because you are no longer holding onto the energy of judgment. Mercy, at its core, is a spiritual practice that sets both the giver and receiver free. And in the spiritual realm, this act is never one-sided. Mercy flows in circles. The more you give it, the more you experience it. The more you allow it to pass through you, the more it surrounds your life with divine favor. Emmet Fox explained mercy as the act of releasing others from the prison of your condemnation. And in doing so, you release yourself from the chains of bitterness, blame, and inner conflict. Mercy doesn't mean you approve of harmful behavior. It means you no longer feed the vibration of pain with your energy. It means you let go of the need to punish and instead choose peace. Let's explore why mercy is not weakness, but power. Mercy breaks the energetic chain of pain. Every judgment you hold ties you to the person or event you judge. It creates a mental and emotional tether, an invisible string that keeps you connected to the wound. When you withhold mercy, you don't just keep them in your mental prison, you stay locked in there with them. You relive the event. You re-feel the pain. You keep feeding the very vibration that wounded you. But when you extend mercy, you break the loop. You cut the cord. You dissolve the energetic knot. Mercy says, I choose not to carry this anymore. That is not passive, it is radically active. It is a declaration of freedom. In this way, mercy is not just an act of kindness toward others. It is a gift to yourself. It is the highest form of spiritual hygiene. It cleanses your consciousness, clears your emotional field, and makes room for peace. Mercy activates the law of reflection. This beatitude is not poetic, it's precise. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Why? Because what you send out, you magnetize back. If you radiate judgment, life mirrors judgment. If you radiate forgiveness, life softens around you. This is not punishment or reward. It is resonance. Every time you choose mercy, you shift your frequency. And that frequency draws experiences that match its tone. A merciful heart experiences mercy in return, not just from people, but from life itself. Things work more smoothly. Opportunities open. Grace flows. Not because of luck, but because your consciousness is aligned with love, and love is the core operating system of the universe. Mercy as a response to human imperfection. We are all growing, all stumbling forward in varying degrees of awareness. The merciful understand this. They don't demand perfection from themselves or others. They know that people act out of pain, fear, conditioning, and confusion, not because they are evil, but because they're disconnected from their source. To be merciful is to see past the behavior and recognize the soul. It doesn't mean you excuse harm. It means you don't add to the harm with condemnation. Jesus said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." That is mercy in action. That is divine perspective. And when you begin to see others this way, through the lens of compassion rather than criticism, you start to heal your own heart. Because the way you see the world is always a reflection of the way you see yourself. When you're harsh with others, it's usually because you're still harsh with yourself. But when mercy flows outward, it is also flowing inward. You begin to treat yourself with more gentleness, patience, and grace. You no longer demand perfection. You celebrate progress. You no longer replay your past mistakes. You release them and move forward in peace. Mercy as a spiritual superpower. Mercy is not about being nice. It is about being free. When you refuse to carry resentment, you reclaim your energy. When you forgive, you stop giving power to the past. When you choose compassion, you align with a higher vibration than the conflict itself. This doesn't make you passive. It makes you spiritually strategic. Instead of trying to control people, you control your state. Instead of reacting, you respond with consciousness. And this shift puts you in alignment with divine law. In a practical sense, mercy allows you to end toxic cycles in relationships, heal emotional patterns inherited from your past, create peaceful boundaries without bitterness, reclaim your emotional energy from past hurts, shift your vibration so that grace can work on your behalf. When you withhold mercy, you block flow. You restrict healing. You close the channel. But when you become merciful, you become a channel for divine love. And divine love always creates harmony wherever it is allowed to flow. Mercy is the bridge to the heart. When people feel judged, they close. When they feel seen with compassion, they open. This is true of others, and it is true of your own inner self. If you want to experience deep connection with people, with yourself, and with the divine, you must begin with mercy. Mercy opens the heart, and once the heart is open, everything becomes possible. Forgiveness, understanding, healing, union. That's why Jesus placed this beatitude in the middle of the sequence. It's the turning point. The first few beatitudes deal with the inner clearing. This one signals a shift. Now that the heart is open, love can begin to flow outward. Now you don't just seek your own healing. You become a vessel for the healing of others. This is not theoretical. It is energetic. It is practical. And it is transformational. How to practice mercy. Release the need to be right. Often, the greatest block to mercy is the ego's insistence on being correct. Let go. Choose peace over victory. Use compassionate self-talk. The more you speak gently to yourself, the easier it becomes to be merciful toward others. Bless those who hurt you, not because they deserve it, but because you do. Blessing them releases the energy from your field. Remember the bigger picture. Everyone is on a journey. Everyone has wounds. Mercy comes when you zoom out and see from the soul's perspective. Ask daily, where am I holding judgment? Am I willing to release it today? This is the practice of mercy, not a one-time act, but a daily orientation of the heart. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Mercy is not a transaction. It is a vibration. When you live in it, you attract it. When you extend it, you expand it. And when you become it, you become unstoppable, not in force, but in grace. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Matthew 5, verse 8. Of all the Beatitudes, this one holds a mysterious, almost mystical promise. You shall see God. Not in some distant afterlife, not as a concept or a belief, but as an experience. Right here, right now, in this world, in this moment. But how? How can the infinite be seen by the finite? How can something as vast, subtle, and formless as God be perceived through human senses? The answer lies in the first part of the sentence. Blessed are the pure in heart. The promise is not given to the clever, the accomplished, or even the religious, but to the pure in heart. Purity, in this context, is not about moral superiority or external perfection. It's about inner clarity. It's about a heart that is undivided, uncluttered, and anchored in truth. To be pure in heart is to possess a single spiritual focus, to see life not through the lens of fear, ego, or judgment, but through the clear lens of divine love. Let's break this down. What does it mean to be pure in heart? Purity of heart is not about pretending to be flawless. It's not about eliminating all human emotions or never making mistakes. In spiritual terms, purity is not perfection. It is alignment. A pure heart is one that is free of inner conflict, free of duplicity, and centered in love rather than fear. A pure heart is not divided between spirit and ego. It doesn't seek both the approval of the world and the approval of God. It is focused, anchored, clear. It longs for truth, not convenience. It seeks to serve, not control. It listens to the inner voice of wisdom, even when it contradicts the noise of the outer world. When your heart is pure, your perception changes. You begin to see with spiritual eyes, not just with your physical senses, but with your intuition, your insight, your deeper knowing. You begin to recognize divine patterns in places where others see only chaos. You see the sacred in the ordinary. You feel the presence of God in a stranger's smile, in a sunset, in a difficult conversation, in your own breath. This is the promise. They shall see God. But it's not because God suddenly appears. It's because the heart has become still enough to notice, removing the inner noise. Most people never see God, not because God is absent, but because the noise inside them is too loud. The ego, with its endless commentary, blocks the stillness required for spiritual sight. The mind obsesses over what's wrong, what's missing, what's next. It clings to grievances, relives the past, and fears the future. All of this creates static in the soul. To become pure in heart is to quiet the static. It is to choose silence over noise, forgiveness over blame, surrender over control. It is to clean the inner window through which you see the world so that light can finally shine through. Jesus was pointing to an ancient spiritual truth found in all mystical traditions. The outer world is a reflection of your inner world. When your heart is cluttered with resentment, fear, and distraction, the world appears hostile and chaotic. But when your heart is clear, centered, and anchored in love, you begin to see the order behind the chaos, the light behind the form, the presence behind the veil. This does not mean denying pain or pretending everything is perfect. It means developing the eyes to see beyond appearances. As Emmet Fox taught, God is always present, always active, always expressing through life, but you must train your consciousness to perceive it. Purity of heart is that training. It is the daily practice of releasing what does not serve your divine perception. The power of spiritual focus. One of the reasons purity is so powerful is because it creates focus, and focus is power. In a distracted world, the person who lives with a clear, focused heart becomes a channel for divine intelligence. Imagine your heart as a lens. If that lens is covered in dust, fear, resentment, judgment, then light cannot pass through clearly. But when you clean the lens through meditation, forgiveness, silence, gratitude, that same light now shines with strength and clarity. Your thoughts become sharper. Your intuition grows. Your decisions carry more impact. You're no longer pulled in 1,000 directions. You are centered. This clarity allows you to see what others miss. You begin to discern divine timing. You sense synchronicities. You receive guidance. You act from wisdom, not impulse. And as a result, you move through the world with peace, presence, and purpose. This is the secret behind seeing God. It's not a mystical hallucination. It's a shift in consciousness. It's the ability to perceive the divine pattern behind every moment. You stop seeing only with the eyes and begin to see with the soul. Purity in practice. How do we cultivate purity of heart? Not by trying to be morally perfect, but by returning again and again to spiritual alignment. Here are 5 ways to practice. Forgive daily. Let go of resentments quickly. They cloud your heart like smoke in a clear room. Even small grudges block your spiritual sight. Simplify your focus. Ask, what am I truly living for? Let go of spiritual multitasking. Choose love. Choose God. Let that be enough. Meditate or sit in silence. Even 5 minutes a day of stillness will begin to clear the noise and recalibrate your perception. Speak honestly. Purity is not only inward, it expresses outwardly through integrity. Let your words match your values. Serve without attachment. Do good, not to be seen or validated, but because it flows from your nature. This reinforces inner clarity. The more you do this, the more your life will shift. Not necessarily because the world changes, but because your way of seeing it does. You begin to recognize divine fingerprints on every event, every face, every challenge. You move from asking, "Why is this happening to me?" to asking, "What is this here to teach me?" You see not just with eyes, but with awareness. Not just with intellect, but with presence. And in that state of presence, you see God. In everything. In the silence between thoughts. In the spaces between words. In the unfolding of a day you didn't plan, but somehow needed. In the eyes of someone who once hurt you. In the whisper of your breath, returning to stillness. You don't have to wait for heaven. You just have to become still enough to perceive it. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. This is not a reward. It is a natural consequence. When the heart becomes clear, the soul becomes aware. And when the soul is aware, the divine is no longer hidden. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Matthew 5 verse 9. This beatitude marks a profound turning point in the soul's spiritual evolution. After cultivating humility, mourning illusions, aligning with truth, and purifying the heart, the soul now begins to express divine consciousness through action. And what is the highest expression of that consciousness? Peace. Not passive peace, not silence through avoidance, not the absence of conflict alone, but living peace, active peace, peace as a creative power that reshapes reality. In this context, peace is not the result of external conditions. It is the cause. It is the frequency. It is the vibration that heals, harmonizes, and restores. To be a peacemaker is to walk the earth as a bridge between opposites, a channel through which divine reconciliation flows. And to do that, one must first become peaceful within. Peace is not the end goal, it's the starting point. So many people think peace is what happens after everything is solved, after the bills are paid, the relationships are fixed, the career is stable. But this beatitude reveals the opposite. Peace is not the effect, it is the cause. The peacemakers are not those who wait for perfect conditions. They are those who cultivate an inner atmosphere of stillness and carry it into the chaos of the world. They respond rather than react. They breathe deeply when others tense up. They speak truth without violence. Their presence changes the energy in the room, not because they dominate, but because they resonate. To be a peacemaker is to become a vibrational match to divine resolution, the higher intelligence that sees beyond duality and brings opposites into harmony. Becoming a vibrational match to divine resolution. Peace begins within, and it begins as a vibration. If your mind is scattered, your emotions in turmoil, your nervous system overloaded, you cannot carry peace into the world. You will instead project your unrest onto everything around you. But when you become peaceful inside, genuinely peaceful, life begins to reflect that vibration back to you. Conversations change. Conflicts dissolve. Solutions appear. Why? Because life always mirrors the dominant tone of your consciousness. This is not magical thinking. It is metaphysical law. Just like a tuning fork causes other forks of the same frequency to vibrate in resonance, your inner peace calls out peace in others. It silences the ego, opens hearts, and invites healing. To become a vibrational match to divine peace means responding instead of reacting, listening more than speaking, releasing the need to win, trusting that truth can speak for itself, recognizing unity even in the midst of apparent division. This is not weakness. It is spiritual strength. It is soul-level maturity. And it's why Jesus says, "They shall be called the children of God." Because in this state, you are no longer just a follower of truth. You are an embodiment of it. You reflect the divine nature itself. Peacemaking is not people-pleasing. It's important to clarify that being a peacemaker is not the same as avoiding conflict or keeping everyone happy. That's ego-based behavior driven by fear of disapproval. True peacemakers are not afraid of discomfort. They are not afraid to confront lies, address injustice, or hold boundaries. But they do it from a different vibration, not from anger or superiority, but from alignment and love. Peacemakers are courageous. They step into difficult conversations and bring calm clarity. They hold space for both sides without collapsing into either. They ask higher questions. They remind people of their shared humanity. They are not neutral. They are rooted. And in that rootedness, they become the still point in the storm. The Hebrew word for peace is shalom, and it doesn't just mean absence of war. It means wholeness, completeness, fullness, harmony, and restoration. That's what peacemakers bring. They don't just stop conflict. They create alignment with wholeness. Inner harmony precedes outer harmony. To be a true peacemaker, you must first become at peace with yourself. If you're still battling your own mind, doubting your own worth, rejecting parts of yourself, you will unconsciously project that inner war onto the world. You'll find conflict everywhere, even in peaceful situations. But when you make peace with your past, your body, your emotions, your imperfection, you start to walk through the world without armor. You stop needing to defend, prove, or control. And that space, that openness, becomes an invitation for others to do the same. Inner peace doesn't mean you have no problems. It means you are not at war with your reality. You are surrendered, present, and available to divine guidance. This makes you a clear channel for creative solutions. How to cultivate peace as a creative force. Silence the mental noise. Peace begins when the mind slows down. Practice mindfulness, prayer, or breathwork daily to train your nervous system into stillness. Transmute emotional tension. Don't suppress your emotions. Feel them fully, express them consciously, and let them move. Then, return to center. Speak less, listen more. Let your words be intentional. Don't rush to fix or defend. Presence heals more than advice. Stop feeding conflict. Even if you're right, ask, is my energy contributing to division or healing? Ask higher questions. Instead of who's right, ask what's true. Instead of how do I win, ask how do we align? Visualize harmony. Before difficult situations, imagine peace flowing into the space. See all parties softening, opening, and aligning with truth. Bless others in silence, even if they disagree with you or oppose you. Blessing shifts energy faster than argument. You become the field, not the fighter. True peacemakers don't fight the world. They become a field of coherence within it. They carry such deep alignment that chaos cannot cling to them. They don't need to convert others to their point of view, because their very presence offers a more peaceful possibility. And this is why they are called children of God, because they mirror the divine pattern. They bring heaven to earth not by preaching about it, but by living it, by becoming it. God is not in opposition. God is not in tension. God is not against. The divine is oneness, stillness, harmony, expansion. When you embody peace, you move as that force. You become a tuning fork for unity in a divided world. You become an oasis of calm in a culture of noise. You become the answer to prayers that haven't even been spoken yet. Not because you do everything perfectly, but because you let divine peace flow through you unhindered. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. This is not a title of ego, but a description of essence. When you become a peacemaker, you are not becoming something new. You are remembering who you've always been. Peace is not a thing you find. It is not a technique you learn. It is the truth of your being uncovered. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 5 verse 10. This final beatitude may appear the most paradoxical, and yet it's one of the most powerful spiritual truths ever uttered. After journeying through humility, mourning, purity, mercy, and peacemaking, the soul arrives at a sobering realization. Living in alignment with divine truth does not guarantee universal approval. In fact, the more you embody truth, the more likely you are to experience resistance from others, from systems, even from parts of yourself not yet fully healed. But Jesus is clear. If you are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for choosing alignment over approval, for embodying peace in a world conditioned by conflict, then you are blessed. Why? Because in that state of unwavering truth, you inherit the kingdom of heaven, not as a place, but as a state of consciousness. Truth will test you, but it will also elevate you. Persecution, in this context, isn't limited to physical harm or imprisonment. It can take subtler, more emotional forms. Being misunderstood or misrepresented, losing relationships because of your growth, facing judgment or mockery for your beliefs, feeling isolated on your spiritual path. Internal doubt as ego resists transformation. When you begin to live in truth, real truth, not just talk about it, you may start to disturb the illusions around you. Your light reveals shadows others aren't ready to face. Your peace may irritate those addicted to conflict. Your refusal to gossip or manipulate may alienate you from certain social circles. Your spiritual clarity might seem threatening to those still clinging to fear-based control. This is persecution, not always dramatic, but deeply personal. It's the quiet sting of being excluded, mocked, or rejected not for doing harm, but for choosing a higher way of being. But here's the paradox. Every time you remain aligned with truth in the face of opposition, you deepen your connection to the divine. You tap into a spiritual authority that no outer condition can shake. You may lose comfort, but you gain clarity. You may lose popularity, but you gain presence. You may lose temporary approval, but you stand tall in eternal truth. Divine alignment is your protection. In the outer world, we're trained to defend ourselves with force, arguments, manipulation, retaliation. But in spiritual reality, your true protection is consciousness. When you align with truth, love, and divine intelligence, you move in a field of energy that no outer force can penetrate. This doesn't mean you won't face difficulty, but it means that you will not be shaken by it. You become anchored in something deeper than circumstance. You stop relying on external validation and become internally sourced. Think of the early mystics, the prophets, the saints. They were often ridiculed, threatened, or worse. But their inner fortitude, their spiritual alignment, gave them a kind of invincibility. They were not seeking the world's approval. They were living from a higher directive. And from that alignment, they changed the world. You don't have to be a mystic or martyr to experience this. Every time you tell the truth, even when it's inconvenient. Refuse to lower your vibration to match conflict. Choose forgiveness when anger would be easier. Decline to participate in gossip, drama, or fear. Walk away from what no longer aligns with your values. You're practicing spiritual courage, and that courage doesn't go unnoticed. You activate unseen protection. You summon spiritual strength. You radiate an energy that shifts rooms before you even speak. Persecution reveals who you really are. Resistance is not always a sign that something is wrong. It may be proof that something is deeply right. When you are persecuted for truth, you are being initiated into deeper authenticity. You're no longer performing. You're no longer shape-shifting to avoid rejection. You are standing naked in your essence, unapologetically aligned with God. This is where the ego dies and the soul takes full form. Every spiritual path has a moment where the crowd walks away, the applause stops, the safety nets fall. This is not punishment. This is purification. It's the moment when you stop asking, "What will they think of me?" and start asking, "What is true?" Persecution trims the ego. It strips away the need to be liked. And in that nakedness, you find freedom. You stop living from reaction and begin to live from revelation. You become a channel, not for popularity, but for presence. The kingdom of heaven is a state of consciousness. Jesus ends this beatitude with the words, "For theirs is the kingdom of heaven." This echoes the first beatitude, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." creating a perfect bookend of spiritual consciousness. So what is the kingdom of heaven? It's not a distant afterlife. It's the unshakable awareness of divine presence within you, the inner realm of peace, power, love, clarity, and joy that no outer condition can grant or take away. When you are persecuted but remain rooted in truth, you no longer rely on the world for identity. You live from the kingdom within, not the chaos without. This is spiritual sovereignty. This is freedom. This is the ultimate blessing. How to cultivate inner fortitude. Affirm your truth. Remind yourself daily, I am safe in truth. I am anchored in love. I walk in divine alignment. Bless those who resist you. Don't internalize their fear or projections. See their soul, not just their behavior. Stay rooted in spiritual practice. Prayer, meditation, and silence are your oxygen. Without them, the ego takes over. Don't take persecution personally. It's not about you. It's about the vibration you carry and what it stirs in others. Surround yourself with aligned community. Even one soul who sees you clearly can fuel your spiritual fire. Let go of the outcome. Don't try to control who stays, who approves, who understands. Your job is to shine, not to explain your light. To walk the path of truth is not always easy, but it is always worth it. Persecution tests the depth of your commitment. It invites you to stop negotiating with your soul. It challenges you to stand not on your own strength, but on the infinite strength of divine love moving through you. And when you say yes to truth, even when it costs you comfort, approval, or relationships, you become unshakable. You walk in the kingdom. You live in the vibration of heaven, not as a future reward, but as a present reality. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. This is your inheritance, not because you've earned it, but because you've chosen it by choosing truth. The journey of the Beatitudes ends here, but in truth, it only begins. This is not a philosophy, it is a path, a way of being, a way of awakening the Christ within. Resist not evil. Matthew 5, verse 39, the Sermon on the Mount. These three words have perplexed theologians, confused followers, and stirred controversy for centuries. At first glance, resist not evil sounds dangerously passive. Should we ignore injustice? Let people walk over us? Tolerate abuse or wrongdoing? But when understood metaphysically, this teaching is not about weakness. It is about supreme spiritual strength. It is not a call to apathy, but an invitation to transcendence. Jesus was not teaching people to submit to tyranny. He was offering a radical formula for dissolving darkness by refusing to fuel it. To resist not evil means to stop feeding energy into what you wish to overcome. It means to withdraw your emotional reaction so that you can respond from divine authority rather than egoic reactivity. When you release resistance, you reclaim your creative power. Resistance strengthens what you fight. In metaphysical law, what you resist persists. Why? Because resistance is energy. The more you fight a condition, fear it, curse it, or obsess over it, even with good intentions, the more attention and emotional charge you feed into it. You become locked in a loop. Your focus amplifies the problem. Your fear energizes the problem. Your reaction entangles you with the problem. Eventually, the problem becomes part of your identity. You feel defined by your opposition. The external conflict becomes an internal prison. But Jesus offers another way. He says, step out of the game entirely. Don't match the energy of evil. Don't argue with it. Don't mirror it. Don't try to destroy it with more of the same. Instead, go higher. Surrender is not submission. To resist not evil does not mean you do nothing. It means you do something different. Instead of reacting from fear or anger, you respond from a higher state of consciousness. This is spiritual judo. You redirect the energy of the attack without taking it in. You allow divine intelligence to do the heavy lifting. You stay rooted in truth rather than wrestling with illusion. Surrender, in this case, is not giving up. It's giving over. It's placing the situation into divine hands. It's stepping back from your ego's compulsive need to fight and letting divine order take its course. The moment you surrender, the energy shifts. Your aura softens. Your nervous system calms. You create space for insight, intuition, and inner peace. You move from victimhood to spiritual authority. Practical examples of resist, not evil. In conversation, instead of escalating a heated argument, you become the still presence. You breathe. You listen deeply. You don't mirror their tone. The energy changes. Truth begins to rise on its own. In relationships, instead of trying to control or correct someone, you detach with love. You stop pushing, demanding, or pleading. And surprisingly, the space you create often invites transformation. In the mind, instead of resisting fear, you allow it to pass through like a wave. You don't suppress it or obsess over it. You breathe. You witness. It dissolves. In society, instead of pouring your outrage into the endless cycle of online debates, you focus your energy on embodying solutions. You meditate, act with integrity, and trust the ripple effect of conscious presence. Energetic Aikido, using non-resistance as power. Non-resistance doesn't mean letting people harm you. It means you don't let their vibration enter your field. You protect your peace, not with walls, but with presence. You don't meet aggression with aggression. You don't fight ego with ego. You stay so rooted in your own alignment that no external storm can pull you off center. This is spiritual Aikido. The attacker uses force, but you don't give them anything to push against. There is no resistance, only stillness, clarity, and grace. From that state, your actions are powerful, effective, and untainted by reactivity. When Jesus says, "Turn the other cheek," he's not suggesting you invite more abuse. He's teaching you to break the cycle of retaliation. Turning the other cheek is an act of inner authority. It's saying, "You cannot control my state. I won't stoop to your level. I choose peace over performance." What you allow to be transforms. The most profound transformations often happen not through struggle, but through acceptance. When you stop resisting pain, it reveals its message. When you stop resisting loneliness, you meet yourself more deeply. When you stop resisting lack, you realize your sufficiency. When you stop resisting a person, they soften, or you finally walk away. Either way, you're free. Non-resistance creates space, and in that space, divine intelligence can enter. Solutions arise. Energy shifts. Your vibration lifts. You stop leaking power through conflict and start radiating coherence. You're not here to fix evil. You're here to transcend it. The ego wants to fix, fight, and figure everything out. But the soul knows a higher way. It sees evil not as an enemy, but as an opportunity to reveal the presence of God in a place where it has been forgotten. You don't overcome darkness by attacking it. You overcome it by turning on the light. To resist, not evil, means you don't react from the same frequency. It means you respond from divine awareness. You choose love over hate, clarity over chaos, stillness over struggle. This is the ultimate spiritual power, to be unmoved by appearances, to stand in peace when all around you is fear, to hold your vibration even when others try to pull you down. When you live like this, you become the shift. You change rooms. You calm storms. You radiate such deep presence that evil has no foothold. Practices to integrate, resist, not evil. The pause practice. Before reacting to any negativity, pause. Take 3 breaths. Ask, am I reacting from fear or responding from truth? Bless and release. When someone attacks or offends, mentally bless them. Not to be superior, but to stay sovereign. I bless you. I release this energy now. Inner alchemy meditation. Visualize the situation that triggers you. Inhale into the discomfort. Exhale light through it. Let it dissolve in your inner fire. Return to center affirmation. I do not resist. I align. I stand in peace. Truth is my power. Choose response over reaction. If you're not clear, wait. Delay action until your heart is settled. Peaceful responses carry far more power. Resist not evil, not because you are powerless, but because you are powerful enough to choose something greater. This teaching is not an invitation to submit to injustice. It's a roadmap to transcend the very conditions that create injustice. Evil cannot survive in the light of non-resistance. It withers when it has nothing to feed on. You don't need to conquer everything. You only need to remain undisturbed in the knowing that God is in control. Let others rage. Let the world spin. You be the still point. Not passive, not indifferent, present, powerful, awake. But I tell you not to resist an evil person. But whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. Matthew 5, verse 39. At first glance, this teaching, like many of Jesus' most radical instructions, seems to go against human logic. Why would anyone willingly turn the other cheek to someone who has just caused them harm? Isn't that weakness? Isn't that surrendering to abuse? Not at all. Jesus, the master metaphysician, wasn't promoting blind passivity or encouraging victimhood. He was offering a spiritual technology, a metaphysical blueprint for disarming negative energy and redirecting it into creative power. To turn the other cheek is not to invite more harm. It is to break the karmic cycle of reaction and retaliation and to reclaim control of your vibration. Let's explore this as both a practical and metaphysical act of strength and sovereignty. The hidden power of non-reaction. In any situation where you are wronged, insulted, or attacked, physically, emotionally, or verbally, there's a moment of choice. A split second where you decide, will I react from the same energy, or will I rise into a higher field? That choice is everything. Most people automatically react. They mirror the energy of the attacker. Someone yells, they yell back. Someone gossips, they retaliate. Someone betrays, they seek revenge. This is energetic entanglement. You lower your vibration to match theirs, and now you are spiritually and emotionally entangled in their reality. Turn the other cheek is the invitation to step off the battlefield entirely. It's the choice to remain aligned with your soul, even when someone else is completely lost in their ego. It is spiritual Aikido. You don't meet force with force, but with a conscious redirection that absorbs and transforms the energy. Redirection is creative, not passive. Think of turning the other cheek as energy redirection. You're not inviting more harm. You're choosing not to hold on to the harm that's already occurred. You're saying, I will not let your dysfunction determine my response. I reclaim my energy and use it to multiply good. This is not about tolerating abuse or enabling injustice. It's about where you place your consciousness. You stop feeding cycles of violence, physical, verbal, emotional, or mental, and instead return to a place of centered power. Turning the other cheek means, I refuse to carry the frequency of your hate into my next moment. I refuse to become the thing I despise. I choose to redirect my energy toward healing, peace, and creation. And in that moment of redirection, you take back your creative authority. Consciousness creates conditions. One of the core metaphysical teachings is this. Your inner state shapes your outer reality. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are, what you dwell in emotionally and energetically. So if someone treats you unfairly and you stay stuck in resentment, retaliation, or mental replay, you prolong the pattern. You solidify the vibration of harm. But if you take a breath, turn inward, and choose peace instead, you initiate a new vibration. You declare, this energy stops with me. And the moment you do that, the field around you begins to shift. You stop recycling pain and begin generating peace. You become a cause, not an effect. You change your life, not by force, but by redirecting focus, multiplying the good. Redirecting energy doesn't just dissolve negativity, it amplifies the good. Whatever you focus on multiplies. If you dwell on an insult, it expands in your awareness. If you bless the person instead, silently, from a place of spiritual clarity, you don't just neutralize the energy, you transform it. Turning the other cheek is an act of creative multiplication. You take what could have become bitterness, and you turn it into fuel for grace. You take offense and turn it into deeper compassion. You take rejection and turn it into self-love. This isn't denial, it's divine transmutation. The most powerful people on earth are not the ones who react with force. They're the ones who remain sovereign under pressure. They don't need to fight every battle because they've mastered the art of turning pain into purpose and resistance into redirection. Metaphysical practice. How to turn the other cheek. 1. Pause the emotional trigger. Before responding to any negativity, take a sacred pause. Breathe. Feel the space between stimulus and response. 2. Name the truth silently. Tell yourself, this is not about me. This is a reflection of their pain. I don't have to carry it. 3. Choose the higher frequency. Instead of attacking, withdraw into stillness. Imagine light flooding the situation. Let your presence become the resolution. 4. Bless and release. Silently say, I bless you. I forgive this. I'll let it go. I keep my peace. 5. Redirect your attention. Put your energy back into something beautiful. Serve someone. Create something. Pray. Meditate. Elevate. Turning the other cheek is not the end of the interaction. It's the beginning of a higher vibration taking root in your life. Examples from everyday life. In relationships, your partner lashes out in anger. You feel the urge to match it. Instead, you take a breath, remain silent, and look at them with compassion. Later, they return and apologize. A new layer of trust is formed, not because you won, but because you chose love. In public, a stranger insults you. You feel heat rise in your chest. You smile, say nothing, and walk away. You do not carry that insult with you. You are free, while they remain trapped in their own projection. In business, a competitor slanders you online. Instead of responding with the same energy, you let your work speak. You focus on creating value. Your reputation grows, not through arguments, but through integrity. This is the unseen power of redirection. This is the wisdom of Jesus, subtle, spiritual, and revolutionary. This is not about avoiding justice. Let's be clear, turn the other cheek does not mean you allow harm to continue. Boundaries are sacred. Accountability is necessary, but you set those boundaries without hatred. You hold others accountable without carrying poison. You stay clear. You stay high. You can walk away. You can speak truth. You can take legal action, leave toxic environments, or expose wrongdoing. But you do it not from revenge, but from divine clarity and sacred responsibility. Your motive matters. When you respond from love, even firm action becomes healing. Turn the other cheek is not a command to be weak. It is an invitation to be unshakable. It is not about abandoning power. It is about finding a higher power that doesn't need to shout, fight, or dominate. It's an act of supreme trust in God, in truth, in the creative power of your own focus. You are not here to fight every battle. You are here to direct energy into higher realms, to hold light in darkness, and to walk as a living demonstration of spiritual sovereignty. When others strike with chaos, you offer peace. When others sow fear, you radiate love. When others demand reaction, you offer redirection. That's not weakness. That's mastery. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Matthew 6, verse 33. This single line from the Sermon on the Mount contains one of the most powerful metaphysical truths ever given. Jesus, speaking not as a religious icon, but as a master of spiritual law, is revealing a divine sequence. First the inner, then the outer. First alignment, then manifestation. Too often, people chase the things they want, money, health, love, status, without addressing the one thing that gives rise to all outer forms: consciousness. They try to rearrange the physical world through effort, strategy, and control, while ignoring the inner world that actually creates those conditions. This teaching is clear. Seek ye first the kingdom, not the career, not the partner, not the home, not the goal. First, return to divine alignment. Root yourself in the inner presence of God. Then, and only then, will all these things be added, Not because you chase them, but because you became the vibration that attracts them. The kingdom is within you. Before we dive deeper, it's essential to understand what the kingdom of God really means. It's not a place you'll enter after death. It's not a far-off realm reserved for the pious. It is a state of consciousness, one that already lives within you, waiting to be awakened. Jesus later says, "The kingdom of God is within you." This isn't metaphor, it's spiritual physics. The kingdom is the inner dimension of divine order. Peace, clarity, abundance, love, intelligence, wholeness. When your thoughts, emotions, and intentions align with this inner truth, your outer world begins to reflect it. Life organizes around your vibration. So to seek the kingdom is not to look outward for answers. It's to turn inward and remember, I am already one with the source of all that is. You don't manifest what you want. You manifest what you are. Manifestation isn't magic. It's mirror law. Life doesn't respond to your desires alone. It responds to your dominant state of being. You can visualize a goal for hours, but if your inner world is filled with doubt, fear, or lack, you'll either block the manifestation or attract a distorted version of it. Why? Because the universe responds not to what you say, but to what you vibrate. This is why Jesus says, seek first the kingdom, because when you get your inner alignment right, the outer automatically aligns. You don't have to force results. You don't have to chase people, manipulate circumstances, or stress over outcomes. When you're aligned with divine consciousness, manifestations become natural byproducts, not desperate pursuits. What does seeking the kingdom look like in practice? It's not about religion or rituals. It's about returning to your center before you move into action. It's the art of prioritizing inner connection over outer control. 1. Stillness before movement. Instead of jumping into your day with anxiety and agendas, start in silence. Breathe, meditate, pray. Return to the awareness that you are one with something larger, wiser, and already complete. 2. Feeling over forcing. Before taking action, check your energy. Are you moving from inspiration or desperation? Peace or panic? Always wait until your inner state matches your desired outcome. 3. Truth before opinion. When faced with a decision, seek truth, not validation. Ask, what aligns with love, integrity, and clarity? Not, what will make others approve of me? 4. Identity over strategy. Don't just change your habits, change your identity. Become the kind of person who already lives in the vibration of your desire, and the actions will follow effortlessly. Why chasing doesn't work? When you seek outer things first, money, attention, control, you create from a sense of separation. You're operating from the assumption that you lack something and you're trying to get it. But in metaphysical law, lack creates more lack. Your striving becomes a declaration, I don't have. And the universe echoes that state back to you. You can build a business from fear and it will feel hollow. You can attract a relationship from insecurity and it will turn toxic. You can reach your goals and still feel empty because you were disconnected from the source the whole time. But when you seek the kingdom first, your outer success becomes an extension of your inner abundance. You're not chasing, you're receiving. You're not hustling, you're harmonizing. Alignment attracts with ease. When you're aligned with divine consciousness, you become magnetic. People want to work with you, support you, follow you, not because of manipulation, but because your presence carries clarity. Opportunities flow to you. Timing works in your favor. Even obstacles seem to organize themselves in your favor. This isn't magic, it's coherence. It's the law of resonance, like attracts like. When you are grounded in peace, peace shows up. When you live in gratitude, blessings multiply. When you operate from love, love returns. Not always instantly, but inevitably, because your inner state commands your outer experience. From desperation to dominion. Many people pray or visualize from desperation. Please God, bring me what I need. But that mindset reinforces separation. It places God out there and keeps your good always one step away. Seeking the kingdom is different. It is the choice to dwell in the awareness. I already am connected to the source of everything I need. I don't chase, I align. This is dominion, not over others, but over your own consciousness. And when you live from dominion, you don't beg for scraps. You realize the banquet is already within you. And from that state, your cup runneth over, living the kingdom consciousness daily. Begin your day with inner stillness before outer noise. Check your energy before you send the email. Make the call. Set the goal. Make alignment your first priority. Not the result, not the speed, not the metrics. Let your inner peace be the success metric. Everything else will follow. Seek ye first the kingdom is not just a spiritual instruction. It's the master key to every area of life. The world teaches hustle. The soul teaches harmony. The world says act first, align later. The soul says align first, and then let action flow from truth. This is what Jesus meant. He wasn't giving us a formula for religion. He was giving us a vibrational roadmap. Kingdom first, all things added after. When you live from the inside out, you stop chasing and start attracting. You stop forcing and start flowing. You stop striving and start remembering. You were never separate from your good. You only needed to realign. Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. Matthew 7 verse 7. This teaching from Jesus is often quoted, but rarely understood in its full metaphysical depth. It sounds simple, a divine promise that if you ask, seek, and knock, you'll receive answers, blessings, and opportunities. But beneath the surface, this statement holds a layered blueprint for manifestation and spiritual alignment. Jesus wasn't offering a linear formula or religious reassurance. He was describing the vibrational dynamics of consciousness. These aren't passive suggestions. They are inner activations, energetic principles that govern how desires move from idea to form, from possibility to reality. Each verb, ask, seek, knock, is a distinct spiritual phase. When practiced together, they represent the full arc of co-creation with divine intelligence. Let's explore each phase and how you can embody it as part of your spiritual journey. 1. Ask, the energetic request. To ask, in spiritual terms, is not merely to utter a wish or speak words out loud. It is to consciously declare your desire from a place of trust in the divine source. Asking is not begging. It is not pleading from lack. It is an act of alignment, a way of saying, I am now ready to receive. When you ask from a place of worthiness, clarity, and intention, you are not trying to convince God to give you something. You are activating a frequency within yourself. You are saying, I acknowledge my desire as valid. I trust that divine supply is unlimited. I believe in the responsiveness of the universe. Asking sets the tone. It declares the vibration you're choosing to embody. If you ask from desperation, you manifest more desperation. If you ask from faith, you begin to open to miracles. Asking is the vibration of permission. You give yourself permission to receive. Reflective practice. Write down a heartfelt desire, not from anxiety, but from clarity. Say to yourself, I ask knowing it is already given in divine timing. Let the desire lift you, not burden you. 2. Seek, the vibrational alignment. Once the desire is declared, the next phase is to seek. But what are you seeking, really? You're not seeking the physical object itself. You're seeking the state of being that matches it. You're seeking alignment. You're tuning your mind and heart to the frequency of the answered prayer. This is where many people get confused. They ask for abundance, then focus on lack. They ask for love, then dwell in loneliness. They ask for health, but marinate in fear. To seek the thing means to become a vibrational match for it. You don't chase the thing. You become the version of yourself who naturally receives it. Jesus said, the kingdom of God is within you. So the act of seeking is not outward striving. It's inward calibration. You align your thoughts, feelings, and actions with the spiritual reality that already exists. Seeking is the vibration of preparation. You are making space for the thing to arrive. Ways to seek spiritually. Visualize not just the result, but how you will feel once it's yours. Clean up inner blocks, resentment, self-doubt, unworthiness. live as if the thing is already on its way, because it is. 3. Knock, the outer activation. Now comes the third phase, knock. This is where action is required. Not frantic, ego-driven action, but divinely inspired movement. Knocking represents the outer expression of your inner alignment. When you knock on a door, you are declaring, I am here. I am ready. You are making your presence known to the opportunity. You are stepping out in faith, even if you don't yet see the full picture. This is the moment of courage, of follow-through, of embodiment. Knocking might look like sending the email, taking the class, applying for the role, starting the project, forgiving the person, leaving the situation. It is the earthly echo of your spiritual decision. Many people ask and seek, but never knock. They wait for conditions to be perfect. They want guarantees. But spiritual manifestation requires movement and faith, not certainty. Knocking is the vibration of readiness. It says, I've done my inner work. Now I show up. How to knock? Take one aligned action toward your desire, even if it feels small. Act as the version of yourself who already has it. Trust the process. The knocking may not open that door, but it always leads you closer to the right one. Persistence is a spiritual frequency. Jesus didn't say ask once or knock once. The original Greek translation uses a continuous verb tense, meaning ask and keep asking, seek and keep seeking, knock and keep knocking. This isn't about nagging God. It's about dwelling persistently in the energy of expectancy. It's about sustained consciousness, not a one-time ritual, but a way of being. Persistence isn't repetition. It's devotion. It's returning again and again to the truth, no matter what the outer world says. It's keeping your vibration clear, your heart open, and your energy aligned, even through delay, detours, or doubt. Spiritual persistence is not a forceful push. It's a gentle, unshakable knowing. Why this formula works. Ask clarifies the desire. Seek aligns the vibration. Knock activates the material plane. Each phase builds on the last. Each is essential. If you skip the seeking, your knocking is chaotic. If you skip the knocking, your asking remains wishful. If you skip the asking, your seeking becomes vague. Together, they form a powerful rhythm of creation, where inner and outer meet, and the seen begins to mirror the unseen. Jesus didn't give empty promises. He spoke in codes of spiritual truth. Ask, seek, knock is not about working harder or proving yourself. It is about tuning into the divine laws of consciousness and moving in flow with them. When you ask, do it with faith. When you seek, do it with joy. When you knock, do it with presence. And then let go. Let divine timing unfold. Let synchronicity guide you. Let the door open in its own perfect moment. The universe does not ignore sincerity. God does not withhold good. You are not separate from what you desire. You're simply remembering how to receive it from the inside out. Judge not, that you be not judged. Matthew 7 verse 1. In this simple yet profound statement, Jesus offers one of the clearest instructions for maintaining spiritual clarity and inner peace. But judge not is often misunderstood. To many, it sounds like a moral command to be nice or tolerant. But metaphysically, judge not is not about pretending all behavior is acceptable. It's about preserving your vibrational neutrality so you don't get pulled into the energetic frequency of what you condemn. When you judge, you don't just evaluate an action. You attach your emotional and mental energy to it. You create a loop of resistance, reinforcing duality and distortion. You shift from a neutral, creative field of divine consciousness into a reactive, egoic state. In short, judgment clouds your spiritual perception. It binds you to the very reality you wish to transcend. Let's explore how to live the principle of non-judgment, not as passivity, but as power. Not as avoidance, but as alignment. The vibrational cost of judgment. Judgment is not just an opinion. It's an energetic stance. When you judge someone or something, you're saying, this should not be. This is wrong. This is outside of divine order. On the surface, this may feel justified, but spiritually, it creates internal tension. It pushes you into separation consciousness, where you see the world in terms of right/wrong, good/bad, us/them. That separation is the opposite of spiritual clarity. Judgment also closes your heart. You tense up. Your mind narrows. Your ability to hear divine guidance weakens. Your soul doesn't speak in condemnation. It speaks in compassion, clarity, and calm presence. By judging, you become emotionally entangled with the thing you judge. You bind yourself to it energetically, even as you try to push it away. Non-judgment is not indifference. To judge not does not mean you approve of everything. It doesn't mean turning a blind eye to harm, injustice, or toxic behavior. It means that you don't allow those things to pull you out of alignment. You stay clear, even when seeing clearly. There is a massive difference between discernment, which is spiritual clarity, and judgment, which is emotional reactivity tied to ego. Discernment allows you to make wise decisions, set healthy boundaries, and take inspired action without hostility. It's choosing from alignment, not reaction. Judgment, on the other hand, is noisy. It rushes to label, to blame, to criticize, to make the world wrong in order to feel momentarily righteous. Non-judgment allows grace to move through you, not as passivity, but as precision. When your mind isn't cluttered by condemnation, your intuition becomes laser sharp. You see the truth behind appearances, and you act with calm authority. Judgment is projection. What we judge in others often reflects what we haven't fully healed in ourselves. The world becomes a mirror for our own unresolved energy. When you judge another's arrogance, you may still be healing your own wounds of self-worth. When you judge someone's failure, you may still fear your own. This is not cause for shame. It's cause for awakening. Non-judgment is not just about being kind to others. It's about reclaiming your own projection. It's the practice of noticing. This reaction is mine. What is it showing me about myself? When you remove judgment, you create space to actually see. You move out of illusion and into reality. Why judgment blocks manifestation? From a metaphysical standpoint, judgment disrupts flow. It interrupts your connection to divine order because it places you in opposition to what is. When you judge, you reinforce resistance. You constrict your energy field. You lower your vibration. And from that space, you block the very clarity and abundance you're seeking. For example, if you constantly judge others for being wealthy, successful, or bold, you unknowingly send a message to your subconscious. This kind of life is wrong or dangerous. You'll then sabotage your own rise because you've associated higher living with moral conflict. Non-judgment frees your energy. It returns you to vibrational neutrality, where miracles happen not through effort, but through coherence, where you're no longer pushing against reality, but allowing it to evolve in harmony. The grace of holding space. To judge not is to hold space for transformation. You stop locking people into roles. You stop defining them by their worst moment. You stop demanding they behave a certain way before you allow yourself peace. Instead, you practice grace, the spiritual posture that says, I don't know the whole story, but I trust divine intelligence is at work. This grace doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it keeps you from becoming hard, bitter, or vengeful. It allows you to act when needed, but from a place of wisdom, not woundedness. Inner practices for non-judgment. 1. The pause. When you catch yourself judging, pause. Breathe. Ask, what am I reacting to? What is this showing me about me? 2. Return to center. Affirm inwardly. I choose to see this through the eyes of love. I release my need to label. 3. Create spaciousness. Imagine expanding your field around the person or situation. Don't condense it with tight opinions. Let grace breathe through. 4. Release the role of the one who knows. Let go of needing to be right. Being right is an ego need. Being peaceful is a soul choice. 5. Practice inner forgiveness. When you catch yourself in judgment, don't judge the judgment. Smile inwardly. Say, I forgive this moment. I return to clarity. The fruit of non-judgment, clarity, peace, power. When you live from non-judgment, you see people more clearly. You make wiser choices. You stop wasting energy on emotional entanglements. You feel lighter, freer, more open. You become a vessel for divine guidance. You walk through the world with less resistance and more radiance. You don't get pulled into every drama. You don't react to every shadow. You remain grounded in the kingdom consciousness, where peace precedes understanding. Judge not that ye be not judged. This is not a threat. It's a spiritual key. It's not saying, if you judge others, God will punish you. It's saying, when you live in judgment, you imprison yourself in the very energy you condemn. But when you release judgment, you allow grace. When you release labels, you allow light. When you release opposition, you allow truth. Non-judgment is not passive. It is the most powerful stance of all, the still point that allows transformation to unfold. Let the world be what it is. Let people grow in their own time. Let yourself walk in clarity, not clutter. This is how you create space for grace. And in that space, all healing begins. Forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. Matthew 6, verse 12. Forgiveness is often misunderstood as something you do for others, a noble but optional act of moral generosity. In truth, forgiveness is not about them. It is about you. It's not about excusing harmful behavior. It's about cutting the energetic cord that keeps you tied to the past, to pain, to powerlessness. Jesus placed forgiveness at the center of spiritual practice, not because it's easy, but because it is essential to inner freedom. Without forgiveness, your energy remains trapped. Without forgiveness, your spiritual power remains fragmented. Without forgiveness, you cannot rise. In metaphysical terms, forgiveness is not forgetting or tolerating. It is releasing the emotional charge, the resentment, the anger, the story, so that your energy can return to flow, clarity, and connection with the divine. Let's explore the real meaning of forgiveness and how it unlocks your spiritual evolution. Forgiveness is energy work. At its core, forgiveness is a decision to clear your field. Every grudge, wound, or betrayal you hold on to is like an open tab in your energy system. It drains your presence. It distorts your perception. It limits your manifestation power. You may think holding on to hurt keeps you safe, but in truth, it keeps you stuck. Forgiveness is not about saying, what happened was okay. It's about saying, I no longer allow this moment, person, or pain to dominate my energy. It's an act of self-liberation. You reclaim the life force you've locked in a cycle of rumination. You close the tap. You rise above the wound without erasing its lessons. You don't forgive to let them off the hook. You forgive to get your power back. Many people resist forgiveness because they think it means minimizing what happened. But you can acknowledge the harm fully and truthfully while still choosing to release it. Forgiveness doesn't mean you trust the person again. You approve of the action. You erase the consequences. You let them stay in your life. It means you stop reliving it every day. You stop projecting it into your future. You stop giving your power to the past. To forgive is to declare, this no longer gets to control how I think, feel, or show up. In doing so, you return to spiritual dominion. You become the author of your energy again. The energetic weight of resentment. Resentment is heavy. It's dense, contracted, slow-moving. It lowers your vibration. It clouds your ability to receive intuitive guidance. It attracts more experiences that echo the pain you haven't resolved. When you hold onto resentment, you relive the wound repeatedly. You energetically bind yourself to the person or event. You stay stuck in the frequency of the problem. This is not punishment, it's law. Whatever you dwell in, you extend. Whatever you don't release, you recycle. You cannot manifest abundance while clinging to grievance. You cannot open to divine love while your heart is still armoring itself against betrayal. Forgiveness is the release valve. It opens the door to everything you've been asking for, but couldn't receive because you were too full of unprocessed emotion. Forgiveness restores flow. Think of your life force like a river. Every grudge, regret, or painful memory you hold onto becomes a dam in that river. You may still function, but you're not flowing. When you forgive, you don't destroy the dam. You dissolve it. You let the water run again. Ideas flow. Health improves. Relationships shift. Your connection to the divine becomes clear and strong. Forgiveness is not the end of your story. It's the end of a chapter that no longer defines you. How to forgive, even when it feels impossible. True forgiveness doesn't happen in the mind. It happens in the heart and nervous system. It's a process of feeling, releasing, and choosing to be free. Here's a practical path. 1. Acknowledge the hurt without sugarcoating it. Write or speak the truth of what happened. Name the pain. Don't skip this. You must witness the wound to heal it. 2. Notice the story you've been telling. Ask, what meaning have I attached to this? What identity have I created around this pain? Am I ready to let that go? 3. Feel the emotions without judgment. Let anger, sadness, grief, or rage move through you. Energy must be expressed to be released. 4. Choose the release. Say aloud or inwardly, I choose to forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. Even if you don't feel it yet, say it. This is not a feeling, it's a frequency shift. 5. Reclaim your energy. Visualize cutting the cord between you and the person or memory. See your energy returning to you, golden and whole. 6. Bless and let go. This doesn't mean you bless the behavior. You bless the lesson, the growth, the wisdom. And then you let it go. Self-forgiveness, the forgotten step. Often, the hardest person to forgive is yourself. For what you allowed. For what you didn't know. For how long you stayed. For how you coped. For who you hurt in your pain. But holding yourself hostage doesn't serve your growth. Shame never leads to transformation. Only love does. To forgive yourself is to say, I did the best I could with the awareness I had. I released the version of me who didn't know better. I honor the version of me who survived it. You're not the same person now. Let the old version rest in peace. Forgiveness and spiritual power. Every moment you hold back forgiveness, you diminish your creative power. Every act of forgiveness amplifies it. When you forgive, you increase your intuitive clarity. You allow health and vitality to rise. You dissolve karmic cycles. You magnetize love, peace, and opportunities. You become a vessel of divine grace, not because you followed the rules, but because you chose liberation over limitation. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is strength refined through surrender. It is not a reward for those who deserve it. It is a gift to yourself, a declaration that you will no longer carry what no longer serves. You are not here to suffer indefinitely. You are not here to prove your pain. You are here to remember who you are, whole, holy, powerful, and free. Forgive, not to forget. Forgive, not to condone. Forgive, to rise. Give, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, and shaken together, and running over, shall men give into your bosom. Luke 6, verse 38. This verse from the Gospel of Luke is not a poetic ideal. It's a universal law, the law of circulation. Jesus, the metaphysical teacher, was revealing a sacred principle that governs both spiritual and material prosperity. What you give returns. What you circulate multiplies. But true charity and service in the spiritual sense are not about obligation, pity, or external approval. They are about recognizing yourself as a divine channel, through which the abundance of the infinite flows outward into the world and back again in ever-expanding measure. Let's dismantle the outdated notion of charity as mere social duty and rebuild it as an energetic pathway to wholeness, wealth, and spiritual growth. Giving is not loss, it is circulation. In a limited human mindset, giving is often associated with losing. If I give away time, energy, or money, I'll have less. But the metaphysical truth is the opposite. When you give in alignment, you activate a cycle of increase. You don't give to get, but when you give with clarity and joy, you inevitably expand the flow of energy in your life. Giving is not subtraction. It is multiplication through movement. It keeps the divine current alive. What stagnates dies. What circulates thrives. Money that flows blesses both giver and receiver. Love that flows becomes a mirror of God. Wisdom that flows strengthens the soul. Time that flows creates sacred connection. To give is to participate in the eternal dance of Source, where nothing is ever truly lost, only transformed, expanded, and returned. The spiritual identity of the giver. True charity begins with identity. Before you can give meaningfully, you must understand who you are. You are not a good person helping someone less fortunate. You are a divine instrument through which abundance, compassion, and light move freely. You are not above or below anyone. You are one with the infinite. When you give from this place, not to prove anything, not to fix anyone, you give from wholeness, not lack. And this distinction is everything. Giving from lack says, I hope this makes me worthy. I'm supposed to help. I need to be needed. Giving from truth says, I'm already full. This overflow is natural. This giving expands the divine within me. This is my joy, not my duty. The energy behind the act matters more than the act itself. It's not what you give, it's the consciousness behind it that determines the outcome. You can donate millions and remain in scarcity if your giving is fear-based. You can offer a single heartfelt word or gesture and activate miracles if it flows from love. Energetically aligned service never depletes you. In fact, it expands your own field. When giving is rooted in alignment, it increases joy, magnifies intuition, attracts unexpected blessings, strengthens the soul's purpose. But when giving is forced, resentful, or egoic, it creates energetic resistance. So ask yourself, am I giving from fullness or fear? From joy or judgment? From flow or force? This inner check-in is what makes your giving sacred. Everyone you serve is you. In metaphysical truth, there is no other. Everyone you serve is a reflection of your own consciousness. When you uplift another, you uplift yourself. When you offer kindness, you touch the divine in them, and in doing so, activate it within you. This is not philosophy. It's energetic fact. When you give to someone in need, you're not rescuing. They are offering you an opportunity to remember your spiritual inheritance. The hand you hold is your own. The tears you dry are your own. The love you offer is your own. And the abundance you circulate returns as your own. Practical ways to serve as a channel of circulation. 1. Give where you're lit up. Follow what inspires you. Your highest service is where your joy and someone else's need intersect. That's the divine appointment. 2. Offer without expectation. Don't measure your giving by results. Give because it's who you are, not because you expect praise, return, or transformation. That part is God's work. 3. Make giving a daily frequency. It doesn't have to be grand. Give your full attention. Give an encouraging word. Give silently with your thoughts. When giving becomes a way of being, circulation becomes your natural rhythm. 4. Include yourself. Charity does not mean self-neglect. You cannot pour from an empty vessel. The more you include your own well-being in the circle of care, the more pure and sustainable your service becomes. Why giving unlocks abundance? You cannot give what you don't have, and yet the act of giving confirms that you do have. This is the paradox. You create the reality of abundance by embodying it first. When you give with confidence, you declare, I live in a universe that supports overflow. That declaration has a vibration, and vibration attracts form. The universe listens. It sees your trust and responds. Give love, and you'll find it reflected back in relationships. Give time to someone, and you'll begin to feel more supported. Give financially with gratitude, and prosperity becomes your companion. Not because it's transactional, but because you've entered the field of circulation, where expansion is inevitable. The law of the open hand. Hold everything in your life with an open hand. Whether it's time, love, money, ideas, wisdom, nothing is truly yours to possess. You are a steward, not an owner. The closed hand keeps. The open hand flows. The one who grasps becomes tight, fearful, brittle. The one who gives becomes radiant, magnetic, and at peace. Giving affirms, I trust in the source of all. I'm not limited by appearances. I live in infinite supply. This trust is the foundation of spiritual wealth. Charity and service are not about obligation or appearance. They are about becoming a living channel of divine abundance. You are not separate from the infinite. You are an extension of it. So give without fear. Serve with your whole heart. Trust that what you circulate returns, multiplied, purified, glorified. Let your life say, I am here not just to receive blessings, but to become one. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Matthew 5 verse 6. The term righteousness has long been misunderstood. In traditional interpretations, it often conjures images of moral superiority or rigid adherence to religious laws. But Jesus, the spiritual teacher and metaphysician, was pointing to something far deeper, the inner alignment of thought, emotion, and consciousness with divine truth. Righteousness, in metaphysical terms, is not about behavior alone. It is not about trying to be good in a performative sense. It is about the right use of mind, living in harmony with spiritual law. It is about cultivating thoughts, intentions, and energies that reflect your true divine nature. And when your inner world aligns with truth, love, peace, and clarity, you automatically begin to magnetize external experiences that mirror that frequency. This is the law of attraction in its highest form. The outer reality is shaped by the inner state. Let's unpack the real meaning of righteousness and how it becomes a spiritual magnet for a life of fulfillment. Righteousness is alignment, not appearance. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus repeatedly challenges the hypocrisy of those who perform religious rituals outwardly, but remain disconnected inwardly. He speaks of those who fast publicly, pray loudly, give to the poor for status, yet remain spiritually barren. Why? Because true righteousness is not what others see. It's what you're being inside. To be righteous is not to follow rules blindly. It is to be right in consciousness, to live with thoughts rooted in love, to act from a sense of sacred integrity, to speak with clarity and compassion, and to see through the lens of divine vision. This righteousness is not perfectionism, it's alignment. And when you live in that state, your life begins to harmonize with the universe in visible, tangible ways. The law of attraction begins in consciousness. The law of attraction is often simplified to think positive and good things will come. But that's just the surface layer. At its core, this law is about vibrational congruence. You don't get what you want, you get what you are. If your internal world is filled with fear, resentment, scarcity, or blame, then no amount of surface-level affirmations will override that. The law responds to your dominant state of consciousness, not your passing thoughts. Righteousness, or right thinking, purifies that internal world. It removes the static that blocks your signal. It fine-tunes your inner frequency to match divine truth. And from there, the external must shift to reflect it. In this way, righteousness becomes the engine of manifestation. Right thinking is magnetic. Consider these shifts in consciousness. From fear to trust. From judgment to understanding. From control to surrender. From lack to gratitude. From resentment to release. Each shift raises your vibration. Each shift brings your inner world into closer alignment with universal truth. And when you live in that frequency consistently, you become magnetic to new realities. This is not magic, it's metaphysics. The law of attraction is activated by righteousness. You're not rewarded for being righteous. You're aligned with the flow of a reality that matches it. Inner purity is not naivety, it's precision. Many associate purity with fragility, but spiritual purity is powerful. It's the ability to hold clear, focused, and undistorted thought in a world full of confusion and noise. When your heart and mind are purified, free from excessive ego, emotional clutter, and attachment, you begin to see reality more clearly. You discern without judging. You act without forcing. You receive without clinging. Inner purity means your intentions are clean. Your energy is open. Your vision is sharp. Your soul is quiet enough to hear guidance. This creates harmony, not just spiritually, but practically. Relationships improve. Opportunities flow. Your health stabilizes. Why? Because your inner climate is no longer chaotic, and thus your external world responds in kind. Righteousness is a daily practice. You don't become righteous once and for all. It's a moment-by-moment return to alignment. The world will constantly pull you toward fear, gossip, resentment, impatience, doubt. But righteousness is the inner commitment to return again and again to higher thought, greater clarity, deeper compassion, present awareness, divine perspective. You don't wait until life is perfect to do this. You do it especially when it's not, because those moments are where vibrational mastery is forged. How to cultivate right thinking, spiritual righteousness. 1. Watch your inner dialogue. Become aware of the silent stories running in your mind. Are they aligned with truth? Are they fueled by love or fear? Adjust them gently. 2. Use affirmative prayer. Speak affirmations not just to get things, but to restore your vibration to divine truth. Examples. I am one with infinite good. Divine order governs my life. What I seek is already seeking me. 3. Practice mental non-resistance. When fear, anger, or confusion arise, don't fight them. Acknowledge, feel, and release. Resistance strengthens what you fight. Allowance dissolves it. 4. Align intention with attention. Want peace? Think peacefully. Want prosperity? Think abundantly. Want love? Think kindly. Your attention builds your reality. 5. Meditate on the Christ within. Let your inner Christ nature become the observer of your thoughts. Ask, what would divine wisdom think in this moment? Let that answer lead your mind back to clarity. Why this matters? When Jesus said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you," he was revealing a law, not a reward system. The things, health, abundance, love, opportunity, are effects, not causes. They flow from righteousness, not because God is rewarding you, but because your consciousness is now an open channel through which divine supply can move. Righteousness aligns you with the source, and the source becomes the supplier of your every need. Final reflection. Righteousness is not about moral superiority. It is not about being good for God. It is about becoming a clear vessel for truth. When your thoughts reflect love, clarity, peace, and divine intelligence, you don't have to chase harmony. Harmony finds you. This is the true law of attraction. Not manipulation, not obsession, not desperation, just alignment. Think right, feel right, live right, not by external standards, but by the vibration of your inner Christ. Then all things, right relationships, right opportunities, right timing, will be added unto you, not as a prize, but as a reflection of who you've become. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. Philippians 2, verse 5. To remember who you are is not a poetic invitation. It is the core commandment of spiritual awakening. You're not merely a personality navigating circumstances. You're not your past. You're not your wounds, your habits, or your history. Beneath all conditioning, labels, and surface roles is your divine identity, your Christ nature. This isn't about religion. It's about realignment with your source. The Christ nature is not exclusive to Jesus. Jesus expressed the Christ fully, but he came not to be worshipped as an exception, but to show you what is possible. He came to say, this power, this presence, this union with the Father, it lives in you too. When you remember that, not just intellectually but spiritually, you move from survival to sovereignty, from fear to faith, from ego to essence. Let's explore how reclaiming your divine identity restores your power, peace, and purpose. What is the Christ nature? The Christ nature is the divine spark within you, the individualized presence of God. It is your eternal, unbreakable connection to infinite intelligence, love, and life. It cannot be wounded. It cannot be lost. It cannot be taken from you. It only waits for your recognition. It is the I am of your being, the consciousness that existed before your name, your body, your culture, your story. When Jesus said, "I and the Father are one," he wasn't bragging. He was revealing your true inheritance. To remember who you are is to shift your identity from victim to vessel, seeker to source, limited self to limitless spirit. And this shift is not abstract. It changes everything. The identity crisis of the ego. The ego is not evil. It is just small and scared. It builds its identity around appearance, approval, achievement, accumulation, avoidance of pain. It sees itself as separate, vulnerable, and never quite enough. That's why it constantly chases, defends, compares, and resists. But this identity is fragile, and it is exhausting to maintain. You were never meant to live from ego. You were meant to live from essence, from the deep knowing that says, "I'm already whole. I am one with the infinite. I am here to radiate, not prove." When you remember your divine identity, ego loses its grip. You don't stop being human. You just stop being hostage to limitation. Oneness with God is not a belief. It's a frequency. Oneness is not a theological idea. It's a felt reality, a state of being where your thoughts, emotions, and energy resonate with divine intelligence. In oneness, you no longer beg for help. You listen for guidance. You no longer fear the future. You trust the unfolding. You no longer try to control. You create through alignment. This doesn't make you passive. It makes you potent, because when you live from unity with Source, you become a channel of divine power, not just for yourself, but for others. This is the real meaning of salvation. Not escaping the world, but awakening in it, remembering who you are so clearly that the world itself begins to transform through you. How forgetting feels and what it costs. When you forget your divine identity, you live in anxiety because you think you're unsupported, guilt because you believe you're broken, control because you think you are alone, scarcity because you've disconnected from Source. These are not punishments. They are symptoms of misidentification. You're not being punished. You've just forgotten your password to the kingdom. The good news? It's always recoverable. The truth of who you are is never gone, just covered. It waits for your return. Practices to remember the divine I am. Remembering is not a one-time epiphany. It is a daily practice of realignment. Like tuning an instrument, you return again and again to your soul's true note. 1. Begin the day with I am. Before any external input, say aloud, I am whole. I am one with divine wisdom. I am the light of God made visible. Speak not to convince, but to remember. 2. Disidentify from the story. Notice when you're caught in egoic narratives. I'm not enough. This will never work. They don't care. Pause. Ask, is this the voice of my Christ self? If not, release it. Reclaim your awareness. 3. Meditate on divine union. Sit in stillness. Feel the breath. Inhale, God is. Exhale, I am. Let that rhythm dissolve separation. Let it restore remembrance. 4. Serve from wholeness. Don't try to be spiritual. Just be present. Be kind. Be honest. Be generous. Not to prove, but to reflect the God within you. 5. Surround yourself with truth. Fill your environment with reminders of who you are. Books, affirmations, music, art, anything that lifts your vibration and anchors your identity and spirit. When you remember, everything realigns. You forgive more easily because you no longer personalize pain. You trust more deeply because you know the Source walks with you. You create more boldly because you're no longer creating from lack. You love more freely because you remember you are love itself. This remembrance is not arrogance. It is humility in its highest form. The humility of the soul that finally stops pretending to be small. The Christ mind is already yours. You don't earn it. You don't become worthy of it. You don't have to wait until you've healed everything. You simply say yes. You say, yes, I remember. Yes, I return. Yes, I choose to live from my divine center. And with that yes, the veil lifts. The noise quiets. The truth shines. You're not here to fix yourself. You are here to unveil yourself. Final reflection. To remember who you are is the beginning of every miracle. You're not a seeker reaching upward. You are the presence of God, waking up from the dream of separation. You are the I am behind every form, the light behind every thought, the love beneath every breath. This is your home. This is your name. This is the truth that sets you free. And now you remember. Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. Matthew 5, verse 48. This final invitation in the Sermon on the Mount is not about flawlessness. It is a call to spiritual wholeness, a return to your divine origin, to awaken the Christ within. But awakening is not a one-time event. It is a daily unfolding, a lived rhythm of thought, feeling, and action. It's not enough to understand the Sermon on the Mount. You must embody it. Truth that is not practiced becomes stale. But truth lived becomes transformation. This final segment is your guide to turning the sermon into a living reality. Through 3 integrated spiritual practices, the Beatitudes, guided reflection, the what would love do, meditation, and the spiritual surrender process, you activate the Christ consciousness in everyday life. These are not rituals. They are portals to presence, alignment, and truth. Why daily practice matters. Spiritual principles do not work because you believe in them. They work because you apply them. They are not rewards for being good. They are laws, activated through practice. Without daily alignment, the ego reclaims the throne. Fear begins to masquerade as logic. Love is buried beneath reactivity. The Christ within fades into the background. But with practice, peace becomes your baseline. Guidance becomes clear. Miracles become normal. The Sermon on the Mount becomes your operating system. Let's explore how to build this sacred rhythm. Practice 1. Beatitudes, guided reflection. Time needed, 5 to 10 minutes daily. The Beatitudes are not just poetic sayings. They are vibrational steps in spiritual awakening. Use them as a mirror, a map, a compass. How to practice. Sit quietly and take a few breaths. Place your hand over your heart. Recite each Beatitude slowly and ask the corresponding question. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Where am I invited to let go of ego and open to grace? Blessed are those who mourn. What illusion or attachment is ready to be released through sacred sorrow? Blessed are the meek. Where can I exchange force for flow? Blessed are those who hunger for righteousness. Where am I being called to align more deeply with truth? Blessed are the merciful. Who or what needs my compassion today? Blessed are the pure in heart. What clutter can I clear to see God more clearly? Blessed are the peacemakers. How can I bring harmony into this moment? Blessed are those persecuted for righteousness. Where am I being asked to stand in truth despite resistance? Listen, let the answers rise, not as analysis, but as gentle inner knowing. Close with the affirmation. I align with the divine order of my soul. I walk the path of Christ. Practice 2. What would love do? Meditation. Time needed. 10 to 15 minutes can be shortened or extended. This meditation shifts your lens from ego to soul. Whenever you face a challenge, emotion, or decision, this question brings you into the Christ vibration. How to practice. Find stillness. Sit or lie comfortably. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply into your belly. Bring to mind a situation you're currently facing, one that carries tension, uncertainty, or confusion. Ask softly, what would fear do? What would ego do? Let those answers rise. Don't judge. Just notice. Then ask, what would love do? Feel the shift. Maybe love would speak truth. Maybe love would stay silent. Maybe love would set a boundary. Maybe love would soften. There is no one-size-fits-all answer, but your inner Christ knows. Sit in that frequency, not just the idea, but the feeling of love in action. Let it fill your chest. Let it radiate from you. When ready, affirm. Act from love, not fear. I choose truth over reaction. The Christ in me leads. Practice 3. Spiritual surrender process. Time needed. 5 to 20 minutes, especially powerful during moments of resistance. Surrender is not weakness. It is a profound releasing of control so that divine order can enter. The ego resists. The soul yields. This practice helps you release mental tension and return to the spacious peace where miracles are born. How to practice? Sit in silence. Begin with the breath. Let slow and deepen. Acknowledge the burden. Name it. The fear about money. The ache of betrayal. The pressure of outcomes. The need to fix or solve. Speak it aloud or within. Don't sugarcoat. Hand it over. Literally. Visualize placing it in divine hands. See yourself stepping aside. Say, I surrender this to the higher intelligence within me. I do not carry this alone. Ask to be led. What is mine to do today? What is mine to release? Where am I resisting divine order? Sit in the stillness after the surrender. This is where guidance emerges, not as commands, but as clarity. Close with, not my will, but divine will through me. I am held. I am guided. I am free. Crafting your daily rhythm. You do not need hours. You need intention. Here's a sample flow for a 15-20-minute daily practice. Morning, Beatitudes reflection plus what would love do? Meditation, evening or stressful moment, spiritual surrender process. Throughout the day, whisper, I am, to yourself. Re-anchor in divine identity. Let your practice be alive, evolving. Let it meet you where you are. This is not performance. This is returning. The result, a life of Christ consciousness. Through these practices, you see yourself and others through eyes of compassion. Replace reactivity with radiant presence. Respond to challenge with soul-led wisdom. Navigate uncertainty with trust and vision. Become the Sermon on the Mount in motion. You stop trying to be spiritual. You become a presence that naturally heals, uplifts, and aligns. This is the awakened Christ within you, not a figure from history, but a living flame that now lights your path forward. Final blessing. You are no longer separate. You are no longer seeking. You have remembered. You are the light. You are the channel. You are the sermon. Let the Christ within you rise, not just in moments of prayer, but in every word, breath, action, and intention. The kingdom is not far. It is within you, and now you walk in it.